Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Goddess Complex. I'm Ashley Michelle, your host and resident witch, and we have another episode of Astrology After Dark with the infamous Donnie, that witch next door. How are you today, darling?
I'm so good and so excited for our episode today.
Yeah, we have a good one today. This has been so fun. I don't know about you, Danny, but I have been getting requests for people that the people want to see us do for Astrology After
Yes,
Dark. Have you been getting
yes.
requests?
I get
I
them
think
here and
we
there. I direct a lot of people to you. Yeah.
Okay, I think we need to make like an email box. So,
Ooh,
friends,
yeah.
by the time this comes out, we're just going to go ahead and do it. Info at what should we do? Astrology After Dark or AAD?
Ooh, probably
AAD at
AAD.
gmail.com.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's
Yeah,
easy. Yeah,
I think that's easy too.
yeah.
I'm going to
AAD
put it on my
at
list.
gmail.com.
Okay.
Hit us
And you
up.
guys, yeah, hit us up with any questions, comments, concerns, and the people that you all want to see because I'm not going to lie, I've been getting a lot and I want to make sure that we keep track of everything.
Yay.
So,
Yay, yay, yay. I love that.
so I guess we should just get into it.
Oh, I've been nerding out over this one. It has just
It's so
been
good,
a
right?
snowball. Yes.
Danny and I were talking before we started about deep Hollywood. And so, friends, I think it's important to highlight that as we continue this series, we're probably going to be going down some rabbit
Yeah.
holes.
You kind of can't
Not.
not. Once you
Mm-mm.
get into it, that's exactly what happened with this one for me. I'm like
Yeah.
doing my normal research and there was no slowing the train down.
No, none, none. Full steam ahead.
You
So we're not
can't
going to hold you
not.
anymore. No, you can't not. You can't not. We're going Drew Barrymore,
We're
friends.
going Drew Barrymore.
Drew Barrymore, the infamous Drew Barrymore. If you are a millennial like ourselves, you know Drew. You have a
Oh,
soft
yeah.
spot for Drew.
100%.
Oh my
I
God.
will never not have a soft spot for Drew Barrymore.
She's
And
great.
the research only solidified the living hell out of that, quite honestly.
Oh my
She's
God.
a walking miracle.
She really is.
Miracle that she didn't, and I mean this with respect, but that she didn't end up like Amanda Bynes, that like I mean,
Yeah.
this woman is a fucking walking miracle for the
Poor
things
Amanda Bynes. That's a whole
psychologically has
nother
gone through.
story.
Oh, exactly. That's why
Yeah.
I say that with
Yeah.
respect. I mean, like,
Yeah.
because I'm surprised more people, that's kind of what happens in the research I think that Ash and I are doing is it's like,
hmm
this is a
You start to
deep,
learn
dark tunnel of a
world.
life. Yeah. Yeah.
hmm
Totally.
And Drew Barrymore, when we were trying to decide what we were doing this month, there's something about her that it always called my name. I've always liked her work. I mean, who hasn't? But
Hasn't.
as you grow up, there are certain actors or actresses that just strike a chord string. Adam Sandler's that for me as well.
Same.
Just
Total same.
soft spot. I don't know
Yes.
what it is. There's just
That's
something about their
why
work.
that's why her little shout out to him for watching The Wedding Singer, I
Yeah.
like melted into a puddle for that. It was like this big
Oh
coming
my
full circle
God.
moment. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So let's get into it. You all know if you're watching on the YouTube, you'll be able to see the visual. I highly suggest you watch on the YouTube, and I highly suggest you subscribe, give it a like, give it a comment. You already know, friends. Share this episode with a friend, with a loved one, with somebody that you think would love astrology.
Yes. So,
Alrighty.
if you know anything about her, you a quick research will show you a couple of old headlines, a brief paragraph about her childhood, and it's very easy to see that Drew Barrymore like had it rough. On the surface it looks like, oh, she was young and had a drug problem. It's so much bigger than
eh,
that. It's
And I
so
also
much
want to say
bigger.
too, like when we say had it rough, we also have to take into account that she does come from a family of actors. She comes from
Yes.
a long, 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 long ancestral line of actors. And it will go into, because I'm sure there's people listening like, what the fuck are you talking about? She comes from a long line of actors. I think what you're trying to say is she did have it rough in some instances, and she also did not in some instances.
Oh,
She was,
yes.
and we're
I
we're gonna
mean,
get into it. We're gonna get
right.
into it.
I mean, people act like it was some anomaly, and it wasn't. It
Yeah.
was a
No.
series of circumstances for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
for sure.
So we have Drew Barrymore's birthday here. Again, if you were watching on the YouTube, you can see the visual. She was born in Culver City, California, February 22nd, 1975 at 11:51 a.m. As per usual, this is our favorite here at Astrology After Dark, astro-charts.com is what we're using. I think we should go ahead and tackle the elephant in the room first, which I mean, come on.
Oh,
Yeah, like
I
I think that's where we need to go first. Uh,
so first of all, she just, if you know even a very little bit about astrology's solar season dates, you know this is a fresh baby Pisces.
mhm.
Born just fresh into Pisces season. But
And
not
Danny's
only
saying that
that,
because this her sun in Pisces is just a few degrees into Pisces.
yes.
So as we know, friends, every sign has 30 degrees. So that first 10 degrees of Pisces is, as Danny would say, which I love, is, a baby in that sign.
Mhm.
I'm a fresh baby Sagittarius.
Yes, yes, exactly. And not only is she sun in Pisces, we have quite the Pisces stallion here.
We sure do. These are
Um,
heavy hitters for Pisces.
yeah, they
Let's
are.
talk a little bit about why we are going here, right? Because everybody listening, there
Okay.
are all different levels of astrology. So let's let's talk a little bit about Pisces energy. And just disclaimer, if you don't know, Drew has a very long history with drug and alcohol abuse, incredibly long, starting from a very, very young age. We're talking like
Very. 6.
seven or 8.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Stuff that we haven't even heard about. What sort of terms, keywords, characteristics come to mind to you, Danny, when you think of Pisces energy?
Well, Pisces energy has to learn how to cope with reality in the first
Yeah,
place, which is why it's very, very on par for major Pisces placements to struggle with any
sure
escapist
is.
type activities like addiction
Hmm.
and drug and substance abuse. Um,
It's crazy because you kind of don't want it to be true, but when
mhm,
you've read so many charts and you've seen a Pisces stellium or big names in Pisces, and every fucking time that person that's on the other end of the Zoom call or that person, that client that you're working with has dealt with some of these escapism issues or addictive issues, it's unfortunate because addiction is a hard road. I know that you're working with sobriety. I'm navigating my relationship with alcohol. I have a long line of alcohol and drug abuse in my family. It can really be detrimental. And so I think here, as we have this conversation, it's important to say that, like, we aren't here saying that if you have 3 planets in Pisces, you're going to be a drug addict or an alcoholic. And we're not saying that if you have 4 planets in Taurus that you won't. I think what we are saying here is there is a correlation
mhm.
between Piscean energy and escapism and addictive behavior. And I think that's just important to highlight for anybody who's listening.
Oh, yeah. There's a very common thread there. And that's why it's most accurate to talk about Pisces learning to navigate coping in
Yeah,
general, coping
right, right.
and managing that in a safe and healthy way.
Hmm.
Pisces, other terms I would also use to describe it, which correlates with Drew, is we do associate Pisces with this very childlike charm and
Hmm.
imagination and play and magic. And for a person who was basically literally robbed of their childhood,
Yeah.
that is this is going to make the Pisces area of the chart particularly fascinating and important. If you know that this is a person who has struggled with substance abuse and addiction and childhood trauma, and then you open up a chart and you see a big Pisces stellium like this, we're going to start connecting some dots here for
Right.
sure.
And we also have to, of course, consider Jupiter, the planet of expansion. Friends, anywhere Jupiter is in your chart, it's going to make it bigger anywhere. And so we're already dealing with somebody Drew, who has a long line of addictive behavior. So, alcoholism is genetic. And so she was already predispositioned to that. And, her mother brought her in situations where these substances were easily accessible. And so you put all that together, and it's funny how I'm tangenting, but I can't stop. I mean, it's in the 10th house.
Yep.
Our fame,
Yep.
legacy, what we're known for,
Yep.
our career.
And
And
look what's
she,
empty, her fourth house, home and family and roots.
exactly. And it's so fucking fascinating because it's like, first of all, she became known for having an issue with drugs and substances very young. But not only that, you can't help but ask the question, had she not been born to this family that is very well known for acting for eons, right? Wasn't it like
It was
King Henry,
decades.
Henry the Fourth or
Yeah,
something like
it
that? It
went
was
back a
longer
long
than that,
time. Yeah,
a
it went
very
back a
long
long
time.
time.
Um, this family that's known for their legacy, would something happen different? But I mean, I guess that's the age-old question, the chicken or the egg, right? But anyways, going back, Jupiter makes everything bigger, and Jupiter's pretty much right next to Venus, our planet of business and money, but also our planet of love and pleasure. So, you know, she had a lot of things, or has a lot of things to work against.
So, and I want to make note really quick of something I mentioned about the empty fourth house because we have so many
Mhm.
beginners listening, and I know that the first
Which
place
is right here.
11,000 people are going to go is I have an empty fourth house. Does that mean
100%.
no? So let me be more specific in the observation I was making. When Drew was 11 months old is when her mother put her in her first working job.
Hmm.
And we as astrologers will tell you that the free will comes to play in how we embody and move through our chart.
Right,
There is, just because you have a stacked 10th house and an empty 4th house doesn't mean you are bound to neglect and lose family and home life at
right.
all. Had Drew had a different upbringing setting, this might have changed that a little bit, and she might have been
Hmm.
able to place some healthy, stable, secure roots in the 4th house and created a
Hmm.
little balance. But what happened was, in if you learn about some of the uh before she was born, even trauma that happened while her mother was pregnant, her and her father were in a very abusive relationship.
Hmm.
And I think that I think that the moment that relationship's security was threatened, her mom went into her own mode of, how am I going to support
Yeah,
my lifestyle? I'm going to just be honest about it. I don't think she was really concerned with, like, how am I going to support me and my baby? I think she was like, how am
yeah,
I going to support this Hollywood lifestyle? Because she married into the famous family. It was Drew
she did.
Barrymore's dad. Her mom had
Right,
some jobs and stuff, but she didn't come from the kind of long standing fame that the
right.
Barrymores.
And
And
if you all haven't looked, her mom, they don't make too many mothers like that.
no,
Her
no.
mom,
I'm going to be honest about my
Jesus,
opinions about that today.
Jesus,
Yeah, because it's
Jesus.
bad, because it's real bad.
Um,
And so the way I see this 10th house stellium or majority and empty 4th house is that right off of the bat, first memories in life, Drew is shown that number one of the most important things in your life is this lifestyle, is
mhm.
money, is the
Mm-hmm.
status
Mm-hmm.
specifically. She wasn't given roots in the first place. And
Right.
then on top of that, her dad was totally absent from her life.
Right.
And so now we really don't have any roots. And what is the way that meaning Drew, what is the way that I receive love from a young age? Making somebody money,
Yeah.
showing up in
Yeah.
my most visible form and making something money. I wanted to ask you something from the moment I pulled up this chart today, Ash. The first thing I
Mm-hmm.
noticed, I obviously went to the Pisces, but if you're in the Placidus housing system, which we are, we're not
Mm-hmm.
using whole sign. Her Pisces, and therefore her Virgo, but her Pisces is intercepted in her chart, and it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
rule a house at all. And that is a lot. That's a big stellium to have in an
Mm-hmm.
intercepted sign. Do you work a lot with intercepted signs? Like how would you I get a lot of questions about it, so I talk about it with my students and clients a lot.
Okay. So that's a good question. I think I work more with interceptions on a personal level because it's more of an advanced astrology topic. Okay, let's start with the definition. How would you define an interception? And let me go here to the chart.
Good.
Again, my friends, if you don't know what I'm talking about or what we're talking about, we're going to outline it for you in the chart as Danny
Mhm.
explains,
So, in the Placidus house system,
which is not whole sign.
right, though every zodiac sign does span exactly 30 degrees no matter what,
Right.
the houses do not. And that size of the houses is different depending on physically where on the earth you were born.
Great
So,
example
depending
here is
on,
her 8th house.
mhm,
See, that's a great example, her 8th house versus her 7. That see, like, so what Danny's talking about is the difference in the size.
yes. And if a house is bigger
12,
or a house is smaller, it could be occupied by more or fewer zodiacal energy.
like Gemini and Taurus here in house 12. They both
Yes,
occupy this 12th house.
exactly. Now, her 10th house, which is where the Pisces is,
Hmm.
it's not ruled by Pisces. It's ruled by Aquarius. Her MC, her midheaven, which is the cusp or the beginning of her 10th house, is in Aquarius. That means no matter how big of a presence Pisces has in that house, the ruler, the owner of that house at the end of the day is Aquarius. But
And the
Pisces,
MC is at 29 degrees, friends. So
yes,
if you
it's
go
a
down
critical degree.
here, it's a very critical degree. I noticed it too. 29
Yep.
degrees. And so this is why Danny is saying that.
Now,
The
to
MC
finish
is
out
ruled by the
that
10th house.
house,
Hmm.
that house is not closed out by Pisces
Right.
either. Her 11th house, the next cusp over that begins her 11th house, is actually ruled by Aries. And what
I
this
hope you guys are
means,
understanding.
this is a great one if you don't already watch us on YouTube to really get over for this visual because it
Yeah.
helps so much. Now, where Ash is pointing, you can see that Pisces occupies a large span of the 10th house, but there it has no rulership in this chart at all. It does not
Right.
rule any house at all.
And
And
again, Danny's saying this because her midheaven is at the 29th degree of Aries. And the midheaven is
Aquarius.
ruler of, I'm sorry, of Aquarius, thank you. And the midheaven is the ruler of the 10th house. The 10th house and the midheaven go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, Aquarius or the midheaven is ruler of the 10th house, which is Aquarius. And right here, if if this house was just a few degrees over, at
Yep.
least Pisces would close it out. But it's not, and that's
Nope.
by design. So
Exactly.
Pisces does rule a lot of it, but Pisces does not rule the 10th house.
I have, for whatever astrological, cosmic, divine reason, I have had many, many clients and students. A lot of the charts that I have read, one of the most common questions that gets brought to me is I have
Interceptions.
this sign and it doesn't rule anything, or I have these signs and they rule two houses, and it's because there are two signs intercepted in the house. Um,
Yeah. I think
so
I get a lot of beginner astrologers. That's why like I work with interceptions like on a personal basis. I mean, obviously I'll read interceptions for people if they ask, but it's
mhm,
only if they ask because it can get confusing for
Yeah,
folks,
yeah,
and there's already
absolutely.
so much in the chart to look at.
The way that I read, the way that I've learned and been taught interceptions is it's these part of ourselves that were very, very suppressed, or we had to really contain or keep within us. And there are parts of us that have to really kind of extra put themselves out there to really be embodied or fully appreciated. Um there it's a nuance of the Placidus house system. If you use whole sign, this isn't even a part of your house system or your interpretations. This is only
Hmm.
something that happens in the Placidus house system. And it
So
is
with that definition of interceptions,
mhm.
how would you relate that back to Drew's 10th house interception?
So, the way that reason I think it jumped out at me so
Yeah.
big is while I was doing the research, and this was before I looked up her birthday and looked up her birth chart. So
Hmm.
I didn't even know she was February 22nd. Pisces was
Hmm.
like not on my brain. Um but I was really like wondering about like how I was just reflecting on how you in your most formidable years could have this kind of trauma to your psyche. Like that kind of
I
physical trauma,
know.
doing that kind of
Right.
drugs that young at that age
Woo.
does a fucking number on your nervous system
We're
and your
talking like
brain.
the hard stuff, friends, at a
Oh,
very,
yeah.
very young
Oh, yeah.
age.
Not just getting
Very young
started in
age.
alcohol, which will literally poison
Right.
you at that age,
Hmm.
but then getting into hard drugs. Exactly.
Hmm.
And she was in rehab for context, you guys, at 13 fucking
At
years
13.
old. Rehab.
It's
Rehab.
wild.
Not, you know what I'm
Yeah,
that's anyways. The way
it's
I
wild.
tied all this back with Drew as soon as I saw that, I was like, no wonder she at this point in her life, she's about to turn 50 next year. No wonder at this point in her life she has really started being vocal about her sobriety, her past with addiction.
Yep.
This is that intercepted sign saying,
Mm.
I know that this was a part of my childhood, and I know that these are some of the deepest, most painful wounds and shadows that I possibly have, and I'm going to wear them. And
Yeah.
I'm going to be transparent about them, and I'm going to hope that even if it helps one fucking person to hear
Hmm.
that somebody like me could go through that and be where I am today, I'm going to do it. That's how I saw that Pisces interception over time. I think when she was a kid, I think that the way that intercepted Pisces looked was um that her childhood got shoved away. You didn't
Right.
get to have that. It got shoved away and you got thrusted into adulthood at 6 years old. And I think that
Which is
she had to
insane.
learn how to come into childlike wonder. I think it's why she's the kind of parent that she is, which, by the way, she won't let her kids go into the industry until
She
she's
won't.
18. And I'm
I also,
mad.
though, I think she allowed herself to have that childlike wonder on ET in the
Yes.
workplace, which
Yes.
even it
Very
really,
good point.
it's to your point, to be honest with you, because again, 10th house, what she's known for, right?
Yep.
You know,
Exactly.
in doing research for this, you both came across the ET scenario. Drew was the little sister in ET, if you all didn't know. But she would talk to ET off camera and off set and like have lunch with ET and hang out, and some of the adults had noticed, and so they made sure that somebody was always operating ET for her, even offset, so that she could really get into it, which is what led to essentially a breakout performance for
Yep.
Drew Barrymore. And I also, when I thought about that story, I guess I should say her Gemini ascendant made me think about that story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gemini, the curious kid of the zodiac, right? And there's something so down to earth and real and personal about Drew even now as she enters into her
Agreed.
crone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is lent to that Gemini ascendant, that
Yes.
likability, that talking, like I'm gonna talk. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
say what I want to say. I'm gonna say how I want to say it. Like, you want to know about my fucked up relationship with my mom? She's writing the book at
Yes.
15 years old.
14.
That like that you're
Yes.
writing a book on your memoirs at 14 fucking years old, and you are telling the whole world what a piece of shit mom you had. There are so many of us and people listening here who wouldn't even dare talk about their piece of shit mother, and their piece of shit mother is probably worse than Drew's. And
Yeah.
she's just like, I'm letting it all hang loose, getting emancipated. I'm
She
like, her Gemini ascendant was
she
whoa,
was
coming out hard.
she was headed down the same path that we heartbreakingly see so many child stars head down.
Yeah, for sure.
And instead of getting wrapped up and completely lost in it, she got fucking sober. She
Yeah,
wrote a book about it
yeah.
and straight up said, "Fine, if everybody's gonna know about my shit, I'm gonna be the one to tell the story." And that's what made me think of
Snaps.
that Gemini ascendant too, because you and I, a couple a little while ago on that witch podcast, you and I were talking about Gemini energy and about how a lot of people are threatened by it because they're so matter of fact truthful.
They really are.
And
They
that's
really are.
we totally see that in Drew Barrymore because she's like, I don't know anything else besides this is my experience, this is my story, it's what I went
Mm-hmm.
through. So I'm just going to
Mm-hmm.
tell it the way that it happened. So many other people would have hired a fucking publicist, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
tried to
Yeah.
find the way to spin it and keep it on the DL or whatever. And instead,
Mm-hmm.
she flipped the entire thing on its head, 10th house shit, like you said, and said,
Mm-hmm.
come into the light. I will let you see all of me. All of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Which
so
also lends
fucking
to
fascinating.
this generational baby in Scorpio as well. You know, in the fifth house at that, this idea, Uranus, I'm talking about, sorry, friends. Uranus loves to flip things on its head
Yep.
and loves to do things differently. And again, Uranus is generational, but it is worth bringing it up a little bit because although Uranus is generational, meaning folks that are born around Drew's year are all going to have Uranus right around this placement, give or take. But she's in the early stages of Scorpio, number one. And number two, Uranus is sitting in Scorpio 5 for her, not with like this whole placement is unique to Drew Barrymore.
Right.
And so, with all of this going on, we've got the Uranus kind of, you know, trining the sun here and really kind of allowing her to let her freak flag fly. Drew Barrymore's whole life is unconventional
Mm-hmm.
from like how she was born. There, like how many of us can say that we are born into a long family line of actors back to
Yeah.
Henry IV. And then you're born through to this prestigious family, but your dad wants nothing to do with you. Like, what a fucking oxymoron,
Exactly.
you know? And then you've got
Exactly.
this mother who treats you like a friend and puts you to work quite immediately. And now you're partying at Studio 54 with all of these adults. And then you spend your teen years, that movie that she did when she was 15, she looked like a whole grown ass woman.
She was 13 in that
13,
fucking movie because her mom
whole grown
pulled
woman.
her mom against the advice of her doctors, pulled her from rehab not once, my friends, but twice to
Twice.
fulfill contractual obligations because I'm sorry, but she turned
Mom
her
wanted
own
her
child into a
Prada.
paycheck.
She wanted her
Exactly.
Prada. And that's the
Exactly.
thing. Drew's whole life is unconventional, but like, here's that Scorpio energy, the gift that just keeps on giving, not in the way that we necessarily want, in that
Hmm.
dark kind of way, right? I want
And
to,
that,
yeah,
you know what's interesting about you saying that? I want to just say her Mars is in Capricorn, and we consider this an exaltation, which means so it when a planet is exalted in a sign, it doesn't mean it's just comfortable. It means it's
we
fucking
like it.
thriving there.
We
And
love
this
it.
is a great example that I wanted to point out because we hear about things like a planet in its exaltation, its fall, its
Mm-hmm.
domicile, its detriment, and we
Mm-hmm.
automatically go, that would be good. That would be bad. This is
Right,
a
right.
perfect example of the first beginning half of her life that was abused against her. The
Yes, sure
ability to have
was.
her Mars and be able to functionally do it all was used against her whole life.
I cannot
Now,
imagine
now
going to
she
like
uses it in her
in
benefit, I
her
think.
advantage.
Yes.
Dude, I can't imagine like going to a set like hung over and like hung over off like all sorts of like drugs and like alcohol and as like a young teen, a child, and then performing. I cannot imagine that
No. And the biggest thing I
at
learned
all.
in this deep dive and in the rabbit hole I went anyways down this and other future episodes we'll be getting into, when it comes to being a child in Hollywood, we don't really think about this part, but there are no babysitters on set.
Nope.
So you have a acting coach usually that
Mm-hmm.
happens to be with you a lot because they're teaching you your lines or they're feeding you your lines or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but you are running your own roost.
Right.
You're just at the siege of all these different adults around you
Adults. Yeah.
that
Lots of
they might
adults.
have your
Yeah.
best interest in minds. They might have your worst interest in minds. They might just not give a shit about you at all. And these are
And friends, we
physical,
know
literal children with their brains
children.
still developing,
We
experiencing
know a
this.
lot of adult actors have spoken out about children in acting. It has been a thing. This is such a Pluto and Aquarius conversation,
I
I just have to
know.
say. Such a Pluto and Aquarius conversation. But if you all are unfamiliar and this conversation is piquing your curiosity, I highly suggest you look up some of your favorite actors have probably spoken out around children in Hollywood.
Especially our generation. So if
Our
you're like
generation
us and you
specifically.
grew up on
Yeah.
Disney Channel, they're blowing the
Oh,
lid off of this shit right now.
they
In fact,
really
I have
are.
some suggestions for shows after this because again, once you went down someone like Drew, the rabbit hole did it can't end there because it
No.
leaves you with more questions than answers.
And if
That
you
goes,
ask
well, if
me,
this was Drew Barrymore, what about this person? What
what
about this
about this
person?
person?
Hmm?
I think Drew has gone easy on Hollywood, to be honest with you.
I
There
know.
are, yeah, I think she's gone easy.
I
What
do
she's
too.
gone through based on like what other like former
She
child
doesn't
stars who are now
really
adults
she
talk
doesn't really
about it.
speak out about Hollywood.
No.
What she'll say is, I will not let my kids in the industry until they're 18. She'll
Yes.
go about as far
Yes.
as to say that. But we're
Right.
talking about Drew Barrymore. She's got that Cancer moon. She's got the Pisces sun, still a
Right.
Gemini rising. She puts a very positive spin. She's got that naturally bubbly personality, but she puts a spin on it. I'm talking about
She does put a spin on it. That's a great
kids
way to put it.
kids from Disney Channel that were like, "Hi, you're watching the Disney Channel." They all have a podcast now. They're all fucking blowing the lid off of the
They
child
are
acting industry,
talking.
and
It's
it's just they're waiting for
fascinating.
you to listen, and I think we'll be finding some more episodes through that because that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly what happened to me going through this. And Drew
Mm-hmm.
Barrymore, she was a kid in the 80s.
Right.
And then you add on the 90s and the 2000s, and it was a
The 90s,
well-oiled
man.
machine by then.
Woo! If you all have not seen, I forget what it's called. It's on Hulu. It's like the 90s tapes or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But oh my God. And we're children of the 90s. I remember
I
the 90s like it
know.
was yesterday.
I
And
know.
I have been like watching bits and pieces of it, and I was like,
That's
holy
what
fuck, was the
yes.
90s
Yes,
problematic.
dude. So
Like, oh
and
my
it just
God.
goes to show how desensitized, how easily
Yeah.
desensitized we are to the messages from the media
Yeah.
because
Desensitized.
we
Yeah.
would watch these things and again, you guys just wait for future episodes because I was watching
Right.
some of these things and was like,
We're going
I
in, babes.
watched this as a child and it just
Flu.
flew over my I
Yep.
watched this as a teenager and it just flew over my
Yep.
head because I was
And as an
born
adult, you're
into
like,
it.
oh my
Now you watch
God.
it and you're like, my stomach is doing a 180 right now. Like
It's
this is
crazy.
not okay.
It's
Yes.
crazy. Danny, I wanted to talk to you about one more placement that caught my
Okay.
eye, and I think you might know where I'm going. Saturn, darling. So Saturn is
Yeah.
technically in the second house of Cancer,
Mhm.
but she's so close to the first house. Saturn in Cancer is a placement that I personally don't see very often. And I think it's a very fascinating placement because it reminds me of kind of like oil and water. You know, Cancer,
Mm.
we're thinking mushy, gushy, ushy, and Saturn, we're like stern, stern,
Uh-huh.
stern.
Mm-hmm.
And wherever Saturn is, we're going to experience friction. And I I automatically consider this as like, to put it to you directly, like friction with love and feeling loved and the expansion
Mm.
around love. And you got to notice the Cancer moon as well there
Yeah,
too,
exactly.
Saturn next to the
100%.
moon. What are your thoughts on this placement, and especially it being in the second house, the house of possessions? What is mine?
So instantly where I went is first and foremost one of in kind of more traditional astrology, very often Saturn will be associated with a father archetype and Moon will be
Hmm.
associated with mother
But
archetype.
Saturn is a feminine planet,
Correct,
so I think
correct.
it's
That's
important
why
to
I try to
know.
say archetype like that.
Archetype,
Exactly,
right,
because
right, right.
we take that literal very often. I'm like, we're
We
think
do.
archetypes,
Because
think
they call Saturn
roles.
father time,
Yes, yes,
and none
exactly.
of it's wrong, but I think,
No,
if
but
you're a studier of astrology, we should
yes.
know. Yeah.
Right. That's a fractal of it, but it does not denote exactly the
Hmm.
polarity of Saturn, which is on the right brain polarity associated with feminine
Hmm.
energy. So we know that from a traditional astrology standpoint, very often Saturn, father archetype, moon, mother archetype, Cancer being the sign of the moon, very
And the
associated with
mother, the
mother.
divine mother. Yeah,
Exactly.
the
Very
womb.
associated with mother. So first and foremost, I see this as a person when it's in the second house, a person who deeply craves caring,
Yeah.
caregiving.
Yeah. Poor
And
thing.
I would not be surprised if, even though she was like dubbed this like party child, I wouldn't be
Hmm.
surprised if in a lot of ways Drew was the mom friend and was like the caring
Right.
friend,
Yeah.
even among that crowd.
Yeah.
Saturn does bring about our
Yeah.
karma as far as Saturn is this teacher in the zodiac, and it's very, hey, if we do things this way, this is how they're going to result. Hey, if you keep doing this things this way, this is how they're going to result. And that's where the free will comes in. We can learn from that, or we could totally throw that
Hmm.
out the window. It's totally up to us. I think the fact that her moon is right there, I think this actually did her a service early in life, and why she was
Hmm.
able to find the strength to go to when they were telling the story in the research we were watching and looking into. They were telling the story of her relapse. She was 13. She had 78 days of sobriety, and that's huge, you guys. Like
Yeah.
78 days from hard drugs and alcohol, that's huge. And she relapses, and they tell this story how she was like instantly in tears, like 78 days of sobriety down the drain. Now I don't even have a full minute of sobriety under my belt. I think that Cancer conjunction of the moon and Saturn ended up coming together as one of her greatest teachers and made her
Hmm.
never forget that fucking moment. And I
Yeah.
think that moment and that experience fueled her. Like, it doesn't mean that, once you enter into sobriety and you relapse, like, it's the relapse is part of your sobriety journey. And if you zoom out and you look at all of Drew Barrymore's timeline, you'll see that she started trying to get sober at 13, and that journey lasted a long time. I think that right
Right.
now she doesn't have, like, on the spectrum of years, quote unquote, that much sobriety. Like, she doesn't have
Right.
30 years or whatever.
Right.
She quit drinking not crazy long ago.
I think it
Um
was like after her last divorce or something like
yeah,
that, if I
exactly. It's
remember
not
correctly. Yeah.
that long ago. Which just goes to show, I think that time in her life left a very lasting impression. I think in a good way. I think
I think so too.
and I think it's why it's translating into her own mothering qualities. And this also brings in the second house, but how she manages her day-to-day household and resources now.
Hmm. What is
Very
mine is
much
mine.
so.
And also creating the boundaries around her mother. Speaking of
Yes.
the divine mother,
Yes.
Drew openly speaks out about
Yeah.
how, her last marriage, her and her mother, they had a conversation and they decided it was best that her mother does not attend her wedding.
Yep.
Now, that is some mommy issues. When you have a conversation and decide it's best that your mother does not attend your wedding, there is some clear issues around your relationship with your mother. And even now, it's quite obvious that Drew could take her or leave her. You know, I think that this placement, the Saturn and the moon and Cancer and what is mine, specifically that second house. The second house to me is very much about boundaries and
Mm-hmm.
what not to cross. And she understands herself enough that she needs clear boundaries with that woman.
Yep.
And God bless it. It's
She's
good that she
in,
does.
and you know what I just noticed? And we're going to see how this plays out because Chiron's going to
Right.
be in Aries for a long time, but she's in a Chiron return
Sure
because
is.
Chiron is currently in Aries. Chiron's at about 15 or 16 degrees right now, and her Chiron is at 21 degrees Aries. So this is a very big second coming for Drew in a lot of ways where she's implementing the wisdom she gained from working through her trauma and her
Hmm.
wounds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the Saturn and the moon, I just wanted to check, but this would be considered a conjunction.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So 12 and 18. And a conjunction is when a planet is on top of one another. Most astrologers go by about the 7-degree rule. Do you,
Yeah.
Danny?
I'll
Yeah.
go up to 10, but and say they technically activate one another.
Right.
But I would start calling it a real merging, yes, around the 6-7
Around,
degree mark.
yeah, same,
Yeah.
same. So, which means essentially that these planets function together and learning structures and boundaries around her mother, quite literally. Like if we were to
Yeah.
put that in a nutshell,
Yeah.
that's
And
exactly
and
what we're
and
doing
her
here.
feelings can't escape that. She
Right,
can't escape her emotions and that they
right.
are one in the same.
They are, they are.
So she's a walking, this is why I say she's a walking miracle, only because if first of all, especially if you're a parent or you're ever around or work with young children, I
Hmm.
want you to imagine that fucking 9-year-old drunk or high
Can
regularly.
you imagine? Like, it gives
Staying out
me
till
the
3 in the fucking
heebie-jeebies.
morning. Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
God, it
And then
scares
you tell me
me.
that then 4 years later they're in rehab, and we're
Rehab.
talking lockdown type of rehab, folks.
Like one of
She
those
did not go
places.
to fucking Malibu,
No,
goddamn
they
Barbie
took her ass.
rehab.
They took her in the
Yeah.
middle of the night,
She was in
honey.
solitary confinement a lot of the
Sure
time.
did.
Like it was very, very intense. And the fact that she has this exactly what you said,
Very happy-go-lucky
healthy
personality.
boundaries
Yeah.
around her relationship with her mom. She's translating it into healthy relationship with her kids, going through
Hmm.
what seems like a divorce in a very healthy way, staying
Yeah.
sober through that. Like it's pretty
Yeah.
miraculous. She's a great chart to study,
She
especially
is.
from an inspirational point. If that's something that you need,
Hmm.
is to see someone who fucking did the Lotus thing and came, because you're
Hmm.
right, Ash. Like she,
I love it.
on
Fucking did the
paper,
Lotus thing.
she was given this gifted life,
Yeah.
but then throw some of these wrenches in the system. And I
And
want you
it
to ask
becomes something
yourself,
else.
how would you have, yeah, experienced
100%.
that? Yeah.
100%. And so I love how you said that because that, kind of brings it back full circle. She did have it hard and she also had a gifted life, and
Yeah.
two things can be true at the same time. And
Yes.
this is a prime example of two things being true at the same time.
So true.
Be
Yes.
careful what you ask for, people. I know a lot
I'm,
of people
ugh,
glamorize
I know.
Hollywood and the actresses and the media and television. But it really takes a special sort of individual to be able to navigate that world and not get chewed up and spit out. And
I think so.
Drew was chewed up and spit out a couple of times and lived to see a better day,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I'm so glad that you listened to your intuition. Ash kind
mm-hmm.
of like brought Drew in,
Last
and
minute, yeah,
yeah, and I'm so glad you did, because it, even for me just personally, it spiraled me into some really cool research about the whole
yeah,
entire thing, and she's just such a cool person. This was a
yeah.
good chart.
Yeah. Always follow your intuition, people. The what we were supposed to do, we will be doing, and that's also going to be a really good one. But Drew was like gnawing at me. I was gnawing
Hmm.
at the bit. So, and I'm glad because honestly, this is a really great learner's chart. Everything is
Yes,
like exactly
agree.
where it needs to be.
Yep.
And she's had such a long career where we can see it
Yes,
play
exactly.
out. And so
Yes.
if you're looking to learn astrology and you're only listening, we do highly suggest you check out the YouTube because
Yeah.
you'll learn tons here today.
Yep.
So make sure you follow us on the gram. Danny, where can the people find you?
You can find me at thatwitch.nextdoor everywhere, social media, my website, thatwitchnextdoor.com. You can learn about That Witch School there, book a reading or a session with me. Yeah, I'm all over the place.
Amazing. And I'm Ashley Michelle 90 Day everywhere. The YouTube is linked below. Both of our links to book astrology sessions are down below. We do offer other things, but for Astrology After Dark, to make things simple, our astrology sessions are down below. And again, let us know how you loved the episode. Share it with a friend. Give us a 5-star rating. This stuff helps further our work, people. It helps
Yes.
the people find these episodes that are yearning for this information. So take a few minutes out of your day and just show us some love, and we will be forever grateful. We love you, we thank you, and we will see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao for now.